This is Jarrod Horak, and this is my latest Kentucky Derby 2024 contenders video. And in this video, I'm going to discuss the possibility of a wet track on the first Saturday in May. Now, if you need past performances for Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby Day, you can get those at todaysracingdigest.com. They're also offering their annual Complete Digest Kentucky Derby Day edition. And in that edition, you'll get past performances, analysis, you'll get pace and speed ratings, performance ratings, jockey and trainer stats, and much more. So head on over to todaysracingdigest.com for more details. You can also get my Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby Day full cards at the Digest website or at my personal website, therunawayhorse.com. And if you go over to my sales page, you'll see my full card schedule for Kentucky Derby week. I'm going to be doing full cards for Kentucky Oaks Day and Kentucky Derby Day. Preakness week, I'm going to be doing Black Eyed Susan Day, the day before the Preakness, and then another full card for Preakness Day, and then Belmont Stakes week. The 4-day Belmont Stakes Festival at Saratoga in June, and I'm going to cover full cards all 4 days. So head on over to therunawayhorse.com for more details. I've been doing these Triple Crown Series full cards for many years. I've been selling full cards online since the late 1990s. I've had a lot of success in these Triple Crown Series races and for the full cards as well. So let's hope I can have another productive year in 2024. Now, I finished my Kentucky Oaks Day analysis on April 30th. And my Kentucky Derby Day full card will be finished today, May 1st. So go on over to therunawayhorse.com for more details. And now we'll talk about the horses that have handled wet tracks before. Now, right now, it looks like there's a 70% chance of thunderstorms Kentucky Oaks Day. The Kentucky Derby Day full card forecast the last time that I looked did improve. A chance for partly cloudy skies now Kentucky Derby Day. So maybe we'll see a drying out track. If we're lucky, it'll be fast by the time the Kentucky Derby rolls around. We'll have to see how that plays out. But we'll talk about the horses that have handled wet tracks before. Now, number 1, Dornoch certainly has handled a wet track in his career debut at 6.5 furlongs at Saratoga last summer. He stalked the pace, he finished second. And then in the Remsen Stakes that was run in the mud at Aqueduct in December, and that was one of the most productive 2-year-old races. And in that Remsen, he dueled on the lead, and he was able to turn away Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone rallied from last place and took the lead, but Dornoch fought back, and he was able to win by a nose. And those two were well clear of the rest. And then Dornoch has been in fast track races in 2 starts this year. So from that inside post, they're only going to have one way to go here. I think they know that they handle a wet track, so if it is wet, and even if it's not, I think that they're just going to have to go under Luis Saez and try to go wire to wire. Now, number 2, Sierra Leone. He's handled a wet track twice in his second career start in the mud in the Remsen Stakes. I mentioned that when he rallied from 12 lengths back, and he actually had a short lead, but then Dornoch came back. But do note that that day at Aqueduct, 7 of the 10 races were run in wire-to-wire fashion. It was definitely a speed-favoring track that day, and Sierra Leone almost overcame that, and he just missed in his second career start and first start around 2 turns. And then in his first start this year, he added blinkers, and it was the Risen Star Stakes in the slop at Fairgrounds in February, and he rallied from 9th in a 12-horse field to win by a half length. So he certainly handles a wet track. He handles a fast track. He's going to need some pace help, and if he can get that and a clean trip, certainly could get the job done, whether it's fast or sloppy. Now, another horse, and this horse specifically, could be the one that benefits the most from a wet track, the 3 Mystik Dan. Now, he's 20-1 morning line, and clearly his best career speed rating was earned in the mud in the Southwest Stakes at Oaklawn Park. That was on February 3rd, and he was sitting a good trip that day. He had post 9, but he was able to work out a good mid-pack inner trip, saved ground, came right through on the rail, and ran away and won that by 8 lengths. That was clearly his best career effort. So I think if the track is wet, and Mystik Dan can work out that kind of inner trip that he did in the Southwest Stakes, no reason why he can't run a quality race. Now, Catching Freedom, number 4, he's been in the slop 1 time in the Risen Star Stakes, and he plugged along to finish 3rd there, beating a length and 3/4. Sierra Leone was first, Track Phantom was second, and they're both in this race. So he handles a wet track. The next horse, Catalytic, hasn't been on a wet track, but the 6, Just Steel, has been 2 starts with a 2nd and a 3rd, and he caught runaway winners in those races. He was 3rd, beaten 8 lengths at 7 furlongs at Churchill. That's a good sign that he handled the slop at Churchill Downs, because a sloppy track at one track, that doesn't necessarily mean that if they handled, let's say, the slop at Keeneland, it doesn't mean they're going to handle it at Churchill. all wet tracks are different. And then he also caught the mud in the Southwest Stakes. I mentioned Mystik Dan ran away with that one, and Just Steel stuck the pace, and he was second, outbeaten 8 lengths. Honor Marie has been in the slop twice, lost both times, did finish second in the Churchill slop in the second career start, and finished well in front of Just Steel that day. And then in the Risen Star Stakes, just got too far back, and he ended up finishing 5th. Sierra Leone, Track Phantom, and Catching Freedom were 1, 2, 3. Just a Touch, number 8, has been on a wet track twice. His career debut in the slop at Fairgrounds, he pressed the pace and he won nicely, and that was a fast race. And then in his second career start in the slop in the Gotham Stakes, a 1-turn mile at Aqueduct, he stalked, he finished second. Deterministic had a better stalking trip. Now that track, he didn't seem to handle as well, that wet track that he did in his debut in the slop. But he did handle it, and he ran a decent race, clearly second best. So he handled the slop twice and then a fast track last time, so he can run on anything. Number 9, Encino has scratched. T.O. Password has only raced twice in Japan, and they were both on fast tracks. So he's very inexperienced with only 2 starts. He's the most lightly raced runner in this field. Did have a decent workout earlier in the week, probably impact the pace, probably won't be around at the end. Now, Forever Young, he's run 5 times, and he's won all 5. 3 of them were on fast tracks, and 2 were on good tracks in Japan, and he won by 1.25 lengths and 7 lengths. So he seems to handle anything. They say he doesn't like kickback, and he probably isn't going to want a lot of mud in his face. We'll have to see if it's wet, how he handles that. Now, Track Phantom, number 12, he handled a wet track 2 times. He's adding blinkers for the Kentucky Derby. He was second in both wet track starts. At Churchill Downs in the slop, second time out in a maiden race, he set the pace. He had a clear lead. He missed by a half length. His other race in the slop was in the Risen Star. He set a controlled tempo there. Sierra Leone ran him down in that mile in an 8th race. He should be up on the pace in here. 13, West Saratoga's never been on a wet track. Endlessly, number 14, he's never been on a wet track. He's never even been on dirt. This will be his first start on dirt. So if it's a wet dirt, it's 2 different things that he's going to have to overcome, since he hasn't been on the wet track and he hasn't been on conventional dirt. He'll try to get involved late. He's more of a turf, all-weather type horse. Number 15, Domestic Product. His only start on a wet track was in the mud in the Remsen Stakes, and he stalked the pace, and he was well beaten in 7th in that 10-horse field. Not a great effort there. He ran well in 2 slow-paced fast track races this year, and he'll probably be coming from up the pace under Arad Ortiz Jr. Definitely doesn't move up on a wet track. Now, Grand Mo the First, he's never been on a wet track. Fierceness, number 17, has been on a wet track twice with mixed results. In the mud in his debut at Saratoga, he got the lead, and he won by 11. In the Champagne Stakes, in the slop second time out, he lunged at the start, and he just never really got involved there, made a bit of a middle move, and then was beaten 20 lengths. So I think more than anything else, he can handle any kind of footing. He just needs to get out of the gate quickly and get into the race early. And if he can do that, I think he's a contender for the win, obviously, whether it's a fast track or a wet track. Number 18, Stronghold, in from California, has never been on a wet track. Number 19, Resilience, was on a wet track once in the Risen Star Stakes. He ran okay there. He stalked the pace from post 10, and then he ended up finishing an even 4th. He was only not too far behind Sierra Leone, Track Phantom, and Catching Freedom that day. And then he added blinkers last time on a fast track, and he improved there. So I don't think it really moves him up a wet track, but he seemed to handle it okay at the fairgrounds. Number 20, Society Man. He's 1 for 2 on an off track. In the Withers Stakes, he was up the track in the mud, and then in his next start in the mud at Aqueduct, he broke his maiden by 3 lengths. But he had Lasix that day, and then he comes off of a runner-up finish in the Wood Memorial, and from an outer post, he's number 20, but he's going to break from post 19. Frankie Dettori is going to have to work out some kind of trip from off the pace. Number 21, Epic Ride, hasn't been on a wet track. And then number 22, also eligible. He needs 1 defection to get in. Mugatu, he has never been on a wet track. So that's the whole field and how they handle wet tracks. And I think the horses, if I had to guess which horses would handle it best out of all those horses that I mentioned, Just a Touch, number 8, certainly did well on wet tracks twice. He seems to have the best races in front of him. He's got some tactical speed to keep the mud away from him. So if it is wet, I think Just a Touch is certainly going to be a contender in here. Another horse that likes the wet track, Mystik Dan, I mentioned him for sure. He moved up. His best career speed rating was on a wet track, so definitely give him an extra look if it is wet. And then Sierra Leone. Ran well in both wet track starts, winning one, missing the other by a nose over a speed favoring surface. So those are the three horses that I think handle the wet tracks best, but we'll have to see if it's going to be wet or not. And at least two of those horses, Sierra Leone and Just a Touch, are contenders, even if it's faster. Not sure about Mystik Dan, but he does move up on a wet track. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you like this horse racing content. And that'll wrap up this video. Again, keep checking my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing these Derby videos throughout the week. I'm going to be doing my Kentucky Oaks analysis video where I go through the field and give out my top choice. Same thing for the Kentucky Derby. Keep checking my YouTube channel this week. And until I see you next time, good luck at the races.